Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of The Wake Up. It's Thursday, August 8th. We got a great show ahead for you today. We have on the show talking about Trump trying to bring the country together, and he's making himself the victim, of course, while talking and dealing to victims. Also, we take a look about Democrats' efforts for gun reform and check in on the 2020 campaign, which is going to be very, very interesting. So, yeah, this is what we got. We got a lot of stuff to get to. So we start, though, at the top with division trumping unity, unfortunately, because we all thought that at some point or another, Trump would revert back to his true self, because he is not at his heart teleprompter Trump, say nice things Trump, be a good guy all the time Trump. That's just not who he is. And he had to revert back to form. And it's always after these big tragedies where someone where someone pretty much wrangles him under control and puts him on a teleprompter. The kind of awful game that we play is how long is it going to take before he pretty much completely falls up and just loses it. And yeah, I mean, he has been good at least for a couple of days, 2-3 days. I mean, but he has fallen off there. He kind of really broke it, let's be honest. What was the morning after, something like that, when he started blaming these attacks on the media. That kind of broke his presidential mask that he slipped on, that really no one believed he slipped on. But he visited El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. It was testing his ability to please just try to be the commander-in-chief for at least a period of time. I don't think it's really capable. He's just not in his personality to be that for that time. He's not a consoler. He's not a unifier at all. He's just not. It could have been a high-profile moment if he was willing to follow through on his pledge to tone down his rhetoric, at least for one day, and work with Democrats on passing gun control legislation. He started off today with a bold call to expand background checks for gun buyers, saying, quote, "I think we can bring background checks like we never had before at the White House." Then he said, "I'd like to stay out of the political fray." So he started off well, but by the day's end, Trump had a laundry list of Democrats attacked on Twitter, including leaders of the cities he set out to, quote-unquote, help heal. The American people woke up to the president's tweeted attacks on former Texas Representative Beto O'Rourke and got to end the night with a Twitter tirade fired off at Texas Representative Joaquin Castro, spelled Juaquin. Anyway, wow, what an idiot. Again, this never ceases to amaze me. So, Trump memorialized the trip with his grinning thumbs-up photos. He also seemed to be focused on himself. Get a load of the quotes here. We had an amazing day. Trump said in El Paso, as you know, we left Ohio, the love, the respect, the office for the presidency. It's not about the office for the presidency. It's about you showing love to them, you supporting them, and you making them feel better after their towns have just gotten shot up. That is not. It's not about making you feel better or whatever the hell. No, it's not the point here. Both in Dayton and El Paso, Trump kept almost entirely out of public view, a marked break with tradition, as presidents visiting grieving communities typically offer public condolences. According to Washington Post, but it is quite something. So here is, interestingly enough, the Democratic mayor of Dayton, Ohio, reacting literally live to Trump's tweet about her. This is a little soundbite from Twitter.
Is it? I don't see it.
Just left Dayton, Ohio. It's two tweets. Don't blame.
Totally misrepresenting what's this.
She's reading it. She's like.
I'm really confused. We said he was treated very well, so.
I'd love to hear what was.
I don't know what they're talking about misrepresenting, so. Oh well, he lives in his world of Twitter.
That is very, 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 very true. Yeah, he does live in his world of Twitter, but I love that. It's just, oh well, I give it up. But yeah, it's Nan Whaley. There is the mayor in Dayton, Ohio. So, Trump tweets called her news conference a fraud, literally, which went pretty crazy. Trump lashed down on Sherrod Brown, of Ohio, and Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley, as you saw there before. Both Democrats over the characterization of his visits with the hospital patients in Dayton. Pretty much every quote you could trace back to him being just like, "They love me, folks. I was great out there. They love me, folks. I was great. It's not about that. He doesn't even understand it. It's insane." And after that, he tweets a video about "Thank you, Dayton," with videos that are just shots, just people all loving him and kissing him and hugging him. And that's the idea. It's all about how great he is. Anyway, Trump's world of Twitter was indeed very active. He also went after former Vice President Joe Biden, who gave a speech saying Trump's removal was key to heal the country's divisions. He also went after Castro, the lesser brother of a failed presidential candidate, in parentheses 1%, makes a fool of himself every time he opens his mouth. In El Paso, Trump was greeted by several hundred protesters, according to reports, congregating under the hot midday sun at a baseball field for an El Paso Strong event. Some held homemade signs, "Go home, you're not welcome here." And El Paso crowd broke out into a chant of, quote, "Send him back," as real Donald Trump prepares to land in the city, a reporter named Bob Moore tweeted out. None of the patients still being treated at the University Medical Center in El Paso agreed to meet with Trump when he visited the hospital. 2 victims had already been discharged and returned to the hospital to meet with the president. So that's something. Imagine, though, you're sick, you just got shot up, and Trump being like, "So, what do you think of Joaquin Castro? What do you think of Beto O'Rourke? They're attacking me, folks." That is it's pretty insane. That seems to be kind of what happened, but wow. But I mean, there are still some efforts from mostly pretty much all by the Democrats to push some change. They're holding out hope that Trump will take the lead on a push for expanding background checks, but he's not. Obviously, you're going to have to take the lead. That's kind of how it works. If the president tells Congress pass an assault weapons ban, if the president says pass legislation for universal background checks, the Republican Congress and Senate will move on it. The House will undoubtedly move on it, Sherrod Brown told reporters after greeting Trump in Ohio. We can do that. But it remains to be seen whether Trump is willing to defy the National Rifle Association, which advised Trump privately on Tuesday that support for a gun background check would not be popular among Trump voters. Trump has actually proved he can get some things on guns. This is pretty much the stupidest thing ever, though. Literally the inchworm of a way forward. It didn't do anything, and I think it got they challenged it in courts, and that got blocked up. It got stopped with the bump stock ban I'm talking about here. But again, background checks. So end of 2017, Trump vowed to ban bump stocks, and by the end of 2018, the administration finally rolled out federal regulation officially banning the rapid-fire gun attachments. But background checks may be a very different story. Trump has previously expressed openness to the idea of expanded background checks after other mass shootings, but there's been effectively zero momentum since then from either the White House or from Republican leadership on the Hill. So they just don't really care. And again, the NRA spent more than $30 million to elect Trump, so they will have some good access into him. They bought out a pretty good time slot in his They bought a pretty good piece of his personal pie. Let's just put it that way. So just 2 Republican senators, Patrick Toomey and Susan Collins, are on the record in support of expanding background check laws, specifically through a bill Toomey drafted with Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Republicans are heading for extinction in the suburbs if they don't distance themselves from the NRA. The GOP needs to put forth solutions to eradicate the gun violence epidemic, says Dan Eberhard, a Republican donor, to the Washington Post. It's going to be interesting. Speaking of elections and stuff and all that, and who's going to be extinct where, let's talk about the campaign. Joe Biden and Cory Booker took on President Trump. Racial divisions and over the issues of racial division and white supremacy in a pair of unusually impassioned speeches on Wednesday. Through their contrasting approaches reflected differences among Democrats on the path forward following last weekend's mass shootings. According to the Washington Post, Biden lit into Trump in Iowa. How far is it from Trump saying this is an invasion to the shooter in El Paso, declaring this attack is a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas? Biden said after scrapping his prepared remarks in Burlington, I don't think it's that far at all. In both clear language and in code, the president fanned the flames of white supremacy in this nation. And I guess he always wants to have out there that he scrapped his prepared remarks. He's going to make a big and important speech, guys. He's going all in. While Booker focused on race in America, New Jersey senator spent much of his time exploring the nation's painful racial history in broad terms. I think really the star of this has been Beto O'Rourke, who has been really looking good in challenging the president, literally like dropping a few F-bombs to reporters asking if he thinks that there's anything Trump could do to make it better, if he thinks Trump's a racist, whatever the case may be. He's had some pretty fire, at least sound bites, and it seems like he's been helping pretty good with his community down there in El Paso. Beto O'Rourke met Sean Mixon, a Walmart employee who was there at the time of the shooting and helped a child, which is pretty good. Pretty cool moment here. So here he is talking to this worker. I don't know if there's any sound on that. You can see the reporter, the worker, though, Sean Nixon, very emotional.
Yeah. Okay.
You said you're able to see a counselor or a therapist there, but you can see it's very.
It's all right. Come here, man. I'm with you. Cynthia, can I get a card with my number on it?
Yeah, so he pretty much there goes to give out to the guy his personal cell phone number and ask if he needs any help, which is like pretty cool, nice gesture there, in my opinion. So interestingly enough, though, Senator Elizabeth Warren also joined former Texas Representative Beto O'Rourke in calling Trump a white supremacist. Asked in a brief interview with the New York Times if she thought that Trump was a white supremacist, Warren responded without hesitation, yes. He's given aid and comfort to white supremacists. He's done a wink and a nod. He's talked about white supremacists, fine people. He's done everything he can to stir up conflict and racial hatred in this country. Pete Buttigieg says at times like this, it would be helpful if our country had a president. Well, we do. And speaking of the president, it's just not a very good one. That is the problem. Major Wall Street banks have given congressional committees investigating President Trump thousands of pages of documents related to Russians who may have had dealings with Trump, his family, or his businesses. People familiar with congressional probes writes, or tell the Wall Street Journal's Gene Englesham, Rebecca Davis, O'Brien, Sylvan Hughes, and David Benoit. Some banks are also giving documents related to Trump's businesses, the Trump Organization, to New York State investigators. People familiar with the investigation said. And meanwhile, while all this is happening, while we're still trying to recover from a mass shooting that was a direct attack on the immigrant community, the government turns around and does the same thing. Nearly 700 people were arrested in a massive immigration raid. Washington Post reports that U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents swept through 7 work sites in 6 cities across Mississippi on Wednesday, arresting approximately 680 people, the agency said, were undocumented immigrants in what officials said is the largest single-state workplace enforcement action in U.S. history. Workers filled 3 buses, 2 for men and 1 for women, at a Koch Foods Incorporated plant in Tiny Morton, which is 40 miles east of Jackson, Mississippi. They were taken to a military hangar to be processed for immigrant violations. About 70 family, friends, and residents waved goodbye and shouted, "Let them go, let them go." Later, 2 more buses arrived. Wow, so that's really... And again, notice the name. Notice the freaking name on the on the label here, on the name of the factory, Coke